All right, we are live. Welcome, everyone. I'm Feross, CEO of Socket. We're a software supply chain security company that helps organizations understand and manage the risk in open source code that they depend on. And if you're building software today, you're almost certainly building on a foundation of open source code, and our job is to make sure that foundation is trustworthy. And so this is the first episode of something new we're launching at Socket, a monthly Fireside chat series where we sit down with the most interesting, most thoughtful practitioners in security, open source, and AI. So we're not talking to analysts or pundits, but people who are actually in the trenches, maintaining critical infrastructure, responding to incidents, and shaping how the industry thinks about these problems. And we're going to do this every month. And I could not have asked for a better person to kick it off with. We're also launching this series at a genuinely fascinating moment. The threat landscape is shifting fast. Supply chain attacks are increasingly sophisticated and increasingly frequent. And just in the last week or so, we've seen Anthropic's team announce that they surfaced over 500 vulnerability candidates in open source projects using AI, which is remarkable and really only the beginning, I think. As models from Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, and others get better and better at reading code bases and reasoning across components, the cost of finding vulnerabilities is going to drop to zero, I think. And so I think we're approaching a world where the hard part isn't just discovering vulns, but actually everything that comes afterward, right? So validating the findings, coordinating with the maintainers, developing patches, and then figuring out how to absorb these fixes at scale. And it's my opinion that disclosures will probably soon outpace our ability as an industry to actually remediate them. And that's a genuinely new and unsolved problem. And it's going to put enormous pressure on the maintainers who keep critical infrastructure running, which brings me to my guest today. So Christian is a longtime open source contributor and one of the maintainers of Log4j, a logging library that most of the world had probably never heard of until December 2021, when Log4j turned it into kind of the most talked about piece of software on the planet overnight. And Log4j affected an estimated 10% of all digital assets globally. I don't know if how valid that number is, but that's kind of the numbers I've seen approximately. And that would be web apps, cloud services, physical servers, really just everything. And sent security teams at companies large and small into this big emergency response mode right before the holidays. And Christian was at the center of that storm. And so he's thought more carefully than almost anyone about what it means to be a maintainer of critical infrastructure and what the industry gets wrong about open source sustainability and what secure by default actually looks like, especially when you have backwards compatibility to consider. So I've been looking forward to this conversation for a really long time. And with my really long intro out of the way, I'm really excited to kind of talk about what Log4j was really like from the inside and what the industry still hasn't learned from it and how to think about attack surface and foundational libraries. So Christian, welcome. Really, really glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. So I'm very glad to be here and speak about security one more time, because I think it's really, really important. And well, I'm very honored to be on this first episode, and I really hope that many will follow.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really great to be able to chat with you. And I wanted to talk to you for a while. So maybe we can start with, how did you get started as a maintainer of Log4j? I'm really curious about how people find their way to open source software and how they get involved at the beginning.
Yeah, I'm with the Apache Software Foundation for a long time now, and it seems everyone has a different story when it comes to contributing to open source. And mine is like, I had no good education when I was young, and then so I had to learn everything, teach everything myself. And then I was thinking, okay, now I'm a programmer, and I need to, do more. I need to prove myself. And at that time, I, met a really great guy, so a senior developer. His name was Walter, and he taught me many, many things. And one of the things he told me was there is something like open source, and there is a library called Log4j. And I was saying, okay, so what's going on with this library? And he said, something like the people who maintain this, they really love the software. They are, they're thinking about literally every word, every comment, everything. It's not like here in our company. It's like, they really care. And so I was like, oh my God, that sounds like heaven. And probably if I can prove myself, then probably I can join. So I really, so and then I started contributing, but I had no courage to contribute directly to Log4j because for me these were heroes, right? And so I thought I start with something smaller and started with Apache Commons, which is also a fundamental library. And I thought it would be easier to grow into that. So in reality, it was really, really, people loved the software there as well, and they were really strict with me. And at the time when I was about to give up with open source and joining such a foundation, they invited me. And then I was thinking, okay, when I could maintain something like Apache Commons, it was the Compress library. So probably I now can, try to get into Log4j. And again, I had no courage, so I maintained first Log4PHP. And then at some point, I realized Log4j wasn't released in like ages, and so that was finally the step where I put up all my courage and went to the people and said, I want to do this. And since I have earned a little bit of merit, so they let me do things like this. So, and that's it. So I started releasing it, patching it, and in the very early days of Log4j2, which is the at the fundament of Log4j. So I started discussing things and seeing how it all developed. So it was exciting, and I'm still, I still like it there. So even if it's just a logging library, and it's all the fault of my mentor Walter.
That's amazing. Yeah, I see some parallels in my own story. I love that you said that you kind of looked up to these these open source maintainers as I don't remember exactly the word you used, but it was, you sort of felt like, how could one ever be such a good programmer as to be able to kind of contribute to these libraries?
Yes, it's still what I feel today. So when I look around in at the projects that I'm interested in and follow the discussions people are having, I always think so, oh my God, these people are so smart. How can I be like them? Yeah. And I'm totally confused when somebody comes to me and says, thank you for your work, Christian. So it totally confuses me because for me, it's always the others who are better. I think it's called imposter syndrome. I don't know. I don't care about these things. But it's, well, probably this is the way how we keep learning, right? So seeing what other people do and trying to do the same thing or learn from them. Yeah.
Yeah, 100% agree. For me, it was a jQuery library is what I kind of looked up to when I was getting started, and the code, just the random browser hacks and the JavaScript wizardry that they included in there. It felt like if I could understand each incantation, and then I would really be the true master of the the web.
If we could be just like them, so that's the feeling, right? Yeah. Well.
And now you're one of those maintainers. So so you've kind of you've now joined those ranks, and so I guess that brings me to kind of what I wanted to ask you next, which is like, now that you are a maintainer and you've had a chance to be on the other side now for quite a while, what do you think is kind of the most common mismatch between what users think maintainers owe them and kind of what maintainers can realistically provide?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, actually. So, what I think, I mean, if you maintain a library on your own, and if you would have no users, then you would have the fun and you would release things, and everything is good. But when a user joins and they're using your software, the maintainer has some kind of responsibility, right? Or at least I feel like this. And what I also think is that the user also knows that there is some kind of a responsibility. And I believe it can sometimes go out of hand. So sometimes users, are asking for things like for quick patches, quick updates, quick new features, or whatever. So it feels like we are working for them. I mean, we are working somehow for them, but it's not the same as if you would pay us and we work on a specific feature for them. So I believe open source is like, if you want to have a new feature, you need to join the project and you try to build it yourself and contribute. But sometimes it feels like people don't want to contribute; they want you to fix it without in short time. And I can name a couple of people who wrote great libraries, and I can tell you they have families. They want to sleep sometimes, so they cannot work 24/7 for such a library. And yeah, but still, I speak for me, but still we feel the responsibility for our users, right? So we want to do the right thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big responsibility once you
Yes.
go from having no users of your library to having real users. I remember going through the same experience. At first, it was really exciting. Oh, I have a user, and then before you know it, you realize what a responsibility it is, and
Yes.
it can really be this weight on your shoulders of like, oh my gosh, all these people are counting on me now. I'm part of the the infrastructure of the internet, and I better not screw it up. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I would love to see is when users of your open source software would also consider them contributors, not only users, but contributors. And when something is not right, they try to fix it themselves. I know this is not possible, and I know this is a lot to ask, but
Yeah.
if the mindset would be there, then probably there would also be a little bit more understanding for what open source actually means, especially for the smaller projects or the solo maintainers and so on.
Yeah. I think that it's also a challenge because there's so many different ways to do open source,
Right.
different structures and different meanings that people have. I mean, some people think open source is just a license that you put on a code
Right.
base, and they don't think of it as a community. Or sort of like you can put a zip file on your website, and that's open source, right?
All right.
And then there's like kind of the complete opposite extreme, which is open source is like is about the community. But you might even, in some cases, there's some definitions where it's like it doesn't really matter what the license is. You could have technically a non-OSI or open source, license, but
Yeah.
you have all the trappings of open source in terms of the community and the discussions and the issues and the PRs and the collaboration, but it might not technically meet the open source definition. And there's like everything in between, and it's this huge, and then there's the individuals versus foundations versus like huge teams with governance processes, and it's very variable.
Yes, that's right. And when thinking about this, so all these different forms, all these people, so always when there are people involved, there are also emotions involved. And what I always felt is that when somebody comes up and gives you a proper definition of open source and you are not fitting in, this can get really emotional. Or a user doesn't get his feature right in time, or can also get emotional. I mean, look at the issue trackers on GitHub. So they are sometimes really, really emotional.
Yeah. Well, I want to kind of ask you now about your experience being on the receiving end of maybe some of that emotion. So you've said that when Log4j happened, it felt like a bomb dropping. At the time, I think an estimated, like we said earlier, 10% of all digital assets, web apps, cloud services, other things like that were vulnerable. So I'm really curious what it was like to suddenly have the eyes of the world on what had always been a relatively small, quiet project. And how did you experience that shift in attention, especially from the press, right, and from other major frameworks or companies that suddenly you maybe suddenly realized they depended on you and had all these maybe expectations and things?
Yeah, I mean, bomb dropping is pretty much the perfect term for it, actually. So, I mean, when I heard about this, I was sitting on the kitchen table and my son wanted to play some, I think, chess or whatever with me. and I was saying something like, "Yes, I am coming in 5 minutes," and then I saw this, and days later, I came to him and kept the promise. But it was really strange because I think I should write a blog post or something about the five phases of incidents. So like grief, anger, and whatever. And because I think there, first there is this sudden surprise. You sit there and you have a quiet project, as you call it. I mean, a logging library. This is probably the most boring library you can write, right? And it it just adds text to a file, so it's ridiculous, or whatever, right? So and then you see the words remote code execution. And when I saw this, I was actually checking. So, am I in the right mailing list? And my first reaction was, this can't be true. And I put down my mobile, and I wanted to go away, like hiding or something. But then I was thinking, maybe I should read again. Maybe I misunderstood. And then the next phase would be denial or something. So no, this is not true. This can't be true. But it was true. And as you know, it escalated pretty quickly. A colleague of mine has a very good, how to say, a write-up about how it all went. It's from Matt. I can send you the link, or everyone who is interested in this. And things changed really. I mean, it was 1 or 2 days later when I got a call from an old friend, and he didn't call me for like years. And I think I told this story many times, but I took this call, and he asked me, "Christian, did you just break the internet?" And I was like, "Yes, but I'm sorry, I'm busy now." And we are still in touch now. So, but he calls me now more often. So probably he wants to check if I am something new to break the internet. And that was really strange. Even Minecraft broke. My son loves Minecraft, and even that had this security patch. So, and then something strange happened. So imagine you're working for 20 years or whatever in open source, and nobody is interested in what you're doing. And then suddenly your biggest achievement is this security hole, and a German newspaper calls you and asks for an interview. So I gave two newspaper interviews in Germany, and funnily, one of the newspapers called me a couple of months later again and said, "Hey, can we talk about Log4j again? What else did happen?" And I said, "No, everything is fine now. We fixed it. Do you want to know how we fixed it and how it all went?" I never heard from them again. So I mean, people are really interested in when things are wild, so to say. So it was really, really strange to experience that when something breaks, you're suddenly famous. I mean, if it would not break, we wouldn't talk today, right? So I'm sorry for saying this, but if there was no Log4j, you would never have reached out to me and told me, "Hey, you have now very good security practices here in your project. I want to know more about this." Yeah, I mean, I can understand it because the experience is very unique, I guess. Yeah, so we had this press, and I had people calling me from several companies, big companies as well, asking me things like, "How serious is this?" "Yeah, that's very bad." "Can you fix it?" "Can you fix it?" "Yes, probably we can fix it." "Okay, when can you fix it?" "I don't know. We need to ask the team." So for full disclosure, so the fix itself, I didn't write much for the fix. So this was all my colleagues who were there for a long time. One even stopped sleeping for a while, and they took vacation and everything so they could fix it. I was basically here to talk to people, and well, yeah, it was strange. And what also was strange is how many people were using Log4j. I mean, I knew it's used, many times because it's very old, it's very major, and everybody I think knows the name, if you like it or not, but you know the name, and uh, but so many people suddenly said, okay, we shut down our web servers because we are not sure if you're using Log4j, but we are using Java, so there is a chance. And some even said, we don't know if we are using Log4j because we are running nothing based on Java, but it's possible that with apt-get or something, we actually installed it and we don't know what happens. And so, yes, this was very strange. I can tell you, I would have loved if somebody, from the newspapers would have called us and asked us to give an interview because we're doing great work. Well,
Yeah, I totally get it. It's one of the most kind of perverse things, I guess, about the way that open source works, which is that when things are working well, your project is basically invisible, right?
right.
It's invisible infrastructure that everyone depends on, and they only notice it when it stops working. And
That's
so
right.
as a maintainer, you base it, you only get to meet your users when they're upset at you and something's broken. You're
Yes.
like, oh, it's nice to know you're using my software. Nice to meet you. And
Yeah. Right.
right as you have a huge a problem or something that they're upset about.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Silence you until you break it.
Yeah.
So probably if you want to have some feedback on your software, just introduce a bug, everybody annoys, and then you can talk to many people. So, but I don't really advise this.
It's funny because when and maybe we'll talk about it later. When you think about funding software and getting assistance, monetary assistance at least, or maybe even other kinds of assistance in terms of time and resources. One of the things that you realize is like, how do you have a big problem, which is how do you even reach your users, right? How do you even figure out who they are? And so, your idea that introduce a little bug, it might actually not be the worst idea to let people know that you exist.
Oh my God, you don't have it from me.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. Well, I guess one thing about all this attention is, I mean, we're joking about the attention, and putting in a bug to get attention. But I'm actually curious, was there anything about the attention, like once the bug was widely known and you were getting contacted by companies, by the press, was there anything about that attention that actually helped you, or was it almost like entirely a distraction during the response?
Yeah, I mean, all these press things, they were a little bit distracting, I had to say. I mean, it's not a problem because I dedicated my time for that. So the people who are working on the fix, they were not doing so much with the press.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. So they need to know, right? So and they want to know, and I think it's perfectly legit that the world knows if it breaks, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they were not particularly helpful. And what was good and bad at the same time was the community. So you cannot imagine how many hate mails you get when you produce such a bug, right? So you're incompetent and you have no clue, and Java should be forbidden because it's not C++, all these kind of things, up to swear words and all these kind of things. But on the other hand, every time when something like this happens, when somebody really hates you, some other guy comes up and says, hey, I know you're having a lot of stress, but I appreciate you sit down in your spare time and fix this. And a couple of these people, I knew them for ages, like heroes to me. And they showed up and they told us this. And for me personally, that was a really good feeling because you feel a little bit more appreciated. It's not like you're a software vendor and you really broke something here. It's like, yes, you gave the world something, and okay, per accident it broke. We are sorry. We made a mistake probably.
Mm.
And some people understood, and this good vibes. This was, yeah, I still appreciate it. I remember a couple of them, and also the people who said this, and you know, that's that's really good. So if my advice for everyone who is suffering from a dependencies security problem, just send a nice message, and yeah, people will appreciate it, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you got some of those supportive messages in the middle of all
Yes,
the
you
hate.
did. Yes.
Yeah, it's like a lifeline, I think, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
can feel very important. So I think, in the aftermath of all this, I think Log4Shell became kind of a turning point or a rallying cry in conversations about supporting open source,
Yeah.
especially for critical infrastructure projects like Log4j. And from your perspective, did that moment, actually change anything in a lasting way for maintainers? Has there been truly like a change in the way that you get support? And do you think there's still lessons that the industry still hasn't absorbed?
Yeah. I mean, when this happened, I think many companies suddenly woke up. So you know this this comic where this
Yeah.
building broke and the Nebraska guy and so on. So this is reality. This is not even a joke. It's not really a comic. It's documentary for me. And I think companies realize suddenly that they are relying on infrastructure they don't control, and it's like hiring people you never see, using the software without knowing them. And I still feel that companies have understood this. Yes, they have understood this. And what happened then after this security problem was we were invited to talk about this. To companies. Sometimes I was invited to internal conferences from some companies, and even there was a hearing on the White House. Even I was actually preparing to get for the first time to the US, but they have chosen somebody else to go there. Unfortunately, anyway, so it's really there. So even only recently there was a discussion about open source funding at the European Parliament, and they showed a video I have made about Log4Shell recently, and so it's there. And suddenly there were funding available. So there are now multiple fundings, and even we have received one.
Mm.
So we were supported by the Sovereign Tech Fund, which is now called the Sovereign Tech Agency. So very funny story. They just forgot us to ask if we want funding. So, but we asked them, and then they gave us a bunch of money, and I really had a lot of money at my hand. And I went to the project, and I told them, okay, we have money. Who wants to work for it? And from the whole team, we had two and me, so not many. So I think we have now 15 or so active maintainers. So funding is complicated, and there is many problems around funding. So one problem is an example: we have this funding for 1 year. What's after this year? I cannot quit my job to take this money, work on my dream job, and what's after 1 year? I have family probably. So this is also it's really difficult, and the funding options we have now, I don't think they are sustainable. So because what's next year? What's the year after? So you cannot run from funding to funding, and sometimes it's even like, oh, we have funded you right now, so we can't fund you again or refund you. Yeah, so I would hope there is some more movement in this, but it seems that we need more and new security issues to get this moving again. And with the arrival of AI and that it can go better and better, it seems I think people are even more hesitating to, talk about funding. So because nobody knows really where the journey is going, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So to answer your question, I think the industry is aware, but they're not aware enough probably. And yeah, I think governments should be even more aware of this, because government software also builds on open source, right? So we have seen this after Log4j. I know at least in Germany, a couple of government platforms that shut down. So
Yeah. No, it's absolutely a critical infrastructure issue that government should care about.
yes.
You make a really good point too, that I don't think it's discussed enough about the consistency of the funding, because
Right.
when you think about realistically, the folks out of the 15 folks on the Log4j team that were offered this funding, you mentioned only 2 took it. So that really shows you it's really difficult to walk away from a stable job and devote yourself to working full time on an open source project when you don't know that funding will be there. So I would love to get to a world, I don't know how we structure it, that, how we get to this point, but a world where, you could actually be an open source maintainer as a job, right? As like it could be something that a kid says, when I grow up, I want to be an open source maintainer.
Yes, right.
I think that would be a wonderful place to get to. How we get there,
no idea. I fully agree. So it's difficult. And I mean, most humans need a little bit of stability. So of course there are some, I call it the freelancer prototypes. So they are absolutely fine with having a new job all 6 months or so. But usually once a family gets involved, you want some kind of a stability if possible. And that's not it, basically.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Well, I want to talk now about some of the security kind of questions around the attack the vulnerability. And how we should kind of think about attack surface in foundational libraries. I think a lot of people's initial reaction to maybe not a lot, but I definitely saw some people have this opinion about Log4j, which is, how could there possibly be remote code execution in a logging library, right? Like,
I was asking that myself.
Yeah, right. I mean, so it's not actually that unreasonable of a question to ask.
Right.
It almost seems like something, maybe had to go very wrong for this to happen, right? And maybe part of it is, maybe part of it is something in the design. I think that there were similar questions after Heartbleed as well, when people, some people were just questioning, why does this feature even exist, this heartbeat mechanism? Did it really need to be there? And so I'm really curious to know how you think about attack surface in foundational libraries. Like, should we be aiming for fewer features, just really safe defaults? Which levers matter the most, and how do you think about it as a maintainer of a foundational library?
As I understand now, not before, unfortunately, I think we all know that software rots, basically, and you forget what you wrote, right? So you write it, you have a great new feature, you put it somewhere, and then you simply forget about it. Actually, this was one of the things which I think caused Log4j. It was a patch we received in the very early days, and we added it because it made sense. But nobody of us really, used it or needed it. So it was just there. Knowing that a couple of years later, a conference, I think it was the Black Hat conference, spoke about a vulnerability or an attack vector that basically exactly described Log4j. So, we could have known probably. So, but we didn't, because we are developers, right? So we write code. We are not all security experts. So I think there are 2 different professions, actually. So, and if you're in such a situation, I would think you can write all features you want, but turn them off. Turn them off. Everything is off by default. And if your user needs a feature, you just give him the option to turn it on.
Mhm.
So in our case, I don't know who really ever needed this specific feature in Log4j. I think there's probably, I don't know, 5 users on this planet, and this feature was turned on for everyone. So I don't know. It doesn't make sense for me. So save defaults, and that would mean for me turn it off, and make let people opt in, not opt out. And saying this now, it makes me feel stupid because it should be natural. But if you never think about these kind of things, or what could happen, or if you think what could happen about a logging library, what could go wrong? So that's wrong. Something will always go wrong, right? And you have to prepare for that, and that's turn it off. That's what I think.
Yeah, it's such a great point. Obviously, defaults matter. Most people are just going to use the defaults. I think we've learned this, over and over again in security, but in all kinds of parts of society, that people just do the defaults. But the other point that I really liked that you made was that this feature was submitted in a pull request in the early days of the library, and none of the maintainers were necessarily like that familiar with that part of the code, or that interested even in using the feature, or thought it was an important feature. And that's one of the things I think that is so maybe counterintuitive or misunderstood about open source, which is when users are sending PRs, often they say, well, I didn't just file a bug, I actually wrote the code for you. You should merge my PR. I did all the work already. What's the big deal? You should merge it now.
Yeah.
But there's this infinite maintenance burden. Like you hit merge now, but now you own the code forever. They can disappear, but
Right.
you as the maintainer own the maintenance of this code and the support and the security of it indefinitely.
Yes.
And it's so when PRs get closed by maintainers and people get upset, I think that's something that they maybe the contributor doesn't maybe appreciate as much, is that you are signing up as a maintainer to maintain this code forever.
Yes, and I mean, what you said is basically exactly what I have learned from my colleague Volkan from the Log4j team. He was always saying things like, we only add features if we need them. Be careful with what you add. And also these things, if you add it, you have to maintain it. Are you actually stepping up for maintaining it? And I think we need to think about this. So we are not building something which pleases everyone. So it's not possible. You need to focus on, I don't know, your core maybe, and only add what you're willing to support long term. And if you are not supporting it long term, it's because things change, right? Life changes. Then you have to retire it. You need to make it transparent to the user.
Yeah, and it's illuminating when you do push back sometimes on contributors around these kinds of features, and you propose maybe they should fork the project and just add it to their own, add this feature to their own fork.
Yeah.
The pushback often is, well, then I have to maintain it. And it's like, now you're getting it, and now you understand. It sort of makes sense why one would want to push the feature into the main line when you think about it like that.
I mean, I think we still take software very personal, right? So if you write, or if I wrote something in my very early days and it was rejected because it was not good enough or did not match what they had in mind or something, I also took it personal, because I was a young person and I was hungry for being in this group, and I was hungry for learning, and I gave my best, literally. So the first Commons Compress version you could have had. So it was really complicated. It had a plugin system, and I was really proud of it because it did something with reflection and whatever else, and it was really fantastic. And then the response was, hey, that's too complicated. Make it simpler. Make it if else. And I said, well, what if else? I have reflection, but no, if else, please. And they were right, but it still hurt, right? But I think when you grow up, I hope I have grown up a little bit. When you've grown up, then you probably don't take it so personal anymore, but you need to take this opportunity to think twice.
Yeah, absolutely. But it sounds like Log4Shell definitely had some changes for you and your mindset about how security works as a maintainer. But were there any other besides the code, any other I guess mindset changes you had in terms of how you think about risk or responsibility or unintended consequences of design decisions as a maintainer?
Yes, I mean, well, after Log4Shell, it took me a while, but my personal mindset completely shifted. So previously, I was, when I heard something like software security, this was like a black box. It was like, well, what is it, right? And of course, a new SQL injections, but that's about it. And I was also thinking that, yeah, probably nothing happens. But after it, and after having such an issue in the in a logging library, it was like everything that can happen will happen, and you're not safe. And in the particular feature we are asking, so this was basically in the code base for like I don't know, 8 or 9 years or something. Nobody had identified it, so potentially for years this could have been exploited. So there is, I think, something in every code base which can be exploited. We just don't know it yet, right? And there was one thing. So around this exploitation time, so there was the rumor that Log4j was running in the Mars helicopter from NASA, and I was very proud. I don't know about the others. We never talk about these things, but I was so proud, and GitHub gave me a badge, Mars helicopter contributor or whatever, and I'm still having it. But now you're sitting on your desk and you're thinking about this Mars helicopter, and it has a vulnerable version of your code. Then it's like I messed up the Mars mission, right? So is this even possible? But didn't get so bad. So because the NASA said a couple of weeks later, no, we have not been using Log4j. It's just a rumor. I'm telling only you the truth because I want people to believe that I'm still on the Mars. But probably it's not true. I don't know. Probably, maybe they just said it's not true, so nobody goes and exploits the Mars helicopter. But who knows? Anyway, so these are the consequences, right? That you can, have. So you're writing a library and you're not thinking about security, and finally you end up, you know, destroying the Mars helicopter. So yes, yeah, it definitely shifted my mindset about security, and I started to learn a lot about it in the past years. Then.
Yeah. So I guess, how do you think about secure by default in libraries where backwards compatibility is sacred? And where's that line for you? And also maybe I'm curious, like maybe for the viewers to understand as well, what did you ultimately do in Log4j to resolve the Log4Shell vulnerability?
Security by default is now, so I should have it tattooed somewhere on my body because it's now my new mantra. I think it should be, security should be first. I think security can also break backwards compatibility. So, but I understand that this is not always possible. So we have limitations in Log4j 2 as well, and we have limitations in example Apache Commons. Apache Commons is very strict when it comes to backwards compatibility. So I'm probably, how to say, a little bit burned here, because if I have the choice to make something more secure, and the other choice is to leave it as it is because backwards compatibility, I personally would take the security choice. So it's it's not always possible. Like an example for Log4j2, we have now turned on all the features by default. And for Log4j3, our strategy is the opposite. We want to turn off everything by default. And yeah, but it's not simply possible to do that, because if you would change something with Log4j2, the whole world would break again, because they would just update and then they have to change something on the configuration files probably. So I get this. Yeah, it's not so easy. I would love if you could do security first and make everything secure by default, even if it breaks PC. But I understand why people are not really happy about breaking it, so to say.
Yeah, for sure. So we have a question from the chat that I would like to ask you from John Church. He's asking, how was Log4Shell disclosed? It must have been a 0-day, right? How would the response have been different if it was responsibly disclosed, assuming it wasn't?
Yeah, thank you for the question, John. So it's a good one. Actually, we received a private report on, private means for the ASF, we got it on a private mailing list, so no outsiders can look at it. And we received a report from a person, I think he worked for Alibaba at the time, and from China actually then, right? And he sent it and said, okay, look, I can do this. And it took us a few days to understand what he's actually doing. And then when we understood, it was like, okay, this is serious, let's work on a patch. So it was really, nobody knew about this, right? And then we worked on the patch, and with the ASF, it's like, we need 3 days to vote on it and prepare the procedure and everything. So we were all about voting and having a little bit of time. And while we were voting, I remember that the reporter tested this patch and he said it does not work. So that was really bad. Then we restarted the process, but unfortunately, we have seen that some security boards or security-related groups talked about the incident already, and we don't know really how the word got out, but it was out. And so we had the situation that the fix was not ready, so it could be bypassed. And rumors were already spreading that we have this fix. So I can at least tell you that the next vote didn't take 3 days. So we had an emergency vote, which was like, so if we have a couple of +1s, then we just release it. Right? But generally speaking, it was brought to us in a very ethical way, I think in the correct way, and it was handled very professional. And as far as I have heard, the reporter, especially the company of the reporter, they really got trouble from the Chinese government, because as I heard, this is just a rumor, unproven, I don't really know it, but what I heard, the Chinese government has set up a rule that such disclosures need to be reported first to the Chinese government. So I'm absolutely unsure if this is true, but if it is, I am very grateful for the reporter for doing the right thing and bringing it to us first, because otherwise it would have been, wow, imagine we understand this issue while it was exploited. So it would have been even worse. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you for the question, John. We appreciate it. So now, Christian, I want to ask you if you could wave a magic wand and eliminate one class of risk across the entire Java ecosystem, what would it be and why?
Yeah, that's a hard one, but I think from the previous responses, you might have a guess already. I would say that the human is usually not in any threat model, and I think I would like to do my magic and eliminate all the risk from of abandoned or under-maintained libraries that power the system. So we have so many of them. I know you're working with the JavaScript ecosystem. Last time I installed Reactor or something, it was like boom, a billion of libraries, and 200 ask for funding, and 300 have high security risks or something involved. So, and if you look closely, many of them are not maintained anymore. So my magic wand would be to give everyone enough time to maintain this, or at least be transparent about this, right? So visibility, accountability, sustainable support. So that's my, I don't know, what's the spell? Crucio, right? No.
Crucio is the one that tortures.
It's yeah, it's the bad one, right? So probably the anti-Crucio.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that it's become, I mean, as open source has become more and more, I guess, democratized, and you have more and more libraries, and they're smaller and smaller. I think a lot of this is driven by NPM and Rust and newer ecosystems that make it easy to publish packages. It becomes even harder to avoid abandoned or out of date dependencies, because you get these really deep dependency trees, and you have maybe something that's 15 levels deep in the tree that's abandoned or out of date. But in order to fix that, you have very limited tools as the application developer working on the app. At the very top level, you can really only control the direct dependencies a lot of the time. So you end up in this situation where somewhere along that chain, someone, you almost have to get PRs merged all the way down the chain sometimes in order to get a fix into the application. So it's a very difficult problem. We're at Socket, we're actually working on trying to offer people like a better option for this. It's a newer thing we're developing right now called certified patches, and the concept is that you can remain on the version that you're on of the package, but patch the vulnerability out. So in some sense, you are changing the version you're using, but you're but the hope is we can offer these patches without any breaking changes or any API changes when that's possible, so that the work required to migrate your first-party code to support the new API changes, the breaking changes, that can be eliminated. And so the cost to taking a patch is a lot smoother. But it's a big undertaking, and we're sort of at the early stages of it, and so we'll see if it helps. But I think it's it's a huge problem. I agree with you. So you said that developers and maintainers are kind of the first line of defense. And for someone maintaining a critical project largely on their own, like what would be some, what's the best security advice that you would give to other maintainers, especially when your time and your energy and your resources are very limited and constrained?
Well, so if you're maintaining something critical mostly alone, then I think you must accept one uncomfortable truth, and that is something will eventually go wrong. That's usually the case, and I think there's a couple of things then. So first, I think security should not be treated as an add-on or something like this. So that was my mindset and my mistake previously. I was thinking like, oh, now I code it and I make it secure later or something. But today, I believe that security needs to be treated first. So it's first. And if you're unsure if one thing is secure, if you have potential problems, then better go slow. So I know we have no time, but still sometimes it's better to go slow, and then the feature doesn't come out next week or in a month or so. Maybe it takes 2 months or so. The next thing I would say, what I also did is start learning. I know, again, we're all alone time, and when I now say go and learn something, I mean at least invest a little bit of time. So it does not need to be 5 hours a week or so, but I mean the OpenSSF they provide us security training for free, and you can just do small blocks each time, and they are really fun, and they're, a couple of things you probably have never heard, a couple of them you have, and you can progress, and just 10 minutes a day or something like this. And another thing is, if you're mostly alone, then one of the risks is isolation, right? So isolation with your code base and facing an incident, so that's killing you, right? So you can use your community. You can reach out to community. So your community is often also helpful, and so you can ask them for help, so to say. There are also GitHub Secure Fund where you can join, and they help you to learn or get in touch with other people to learn about security, or they have user so chats where you have contact to other maintainers and can ask them. So it's really not, security is really not a solo sport. Who knows, maybe a socket may also be open for some questions. So if it comes to security, at least you're big into security, right? But my best tip would not be all these things. So, but my best tip would be create an incident plan, and not tomorrow or next week. Now, so right after this call, like this now, right? And because what I've learned, so when something like Log4j hits you, then you can't create it anymore. It's too late. Then you need a plan to know to whom do I ask when I have an incident. How do I create an incident report or a CVE or whatever. So how I'm doing these things, and if you're low on time, then probably just copy paste one from a popular open source project. They are usually doing it very well. Try to understand what's inside and create your own incident plan. So for us, it was really fantastic to have fun, because the Apache Software Foundation has even a dedicated security team, and they know exactly how to proceed when something goes wrong. And it was very, very grateful to have these people around who knew what to do and what forms to fill out. And so incident plan.
Yeah.
Stop talking, do this incident plan.
Yeah. Great idea. Yeah. And now flipping it around to the other side of the equation. So the enterprises that are using open source, like what would you advise them? What would be like a practice you wish every enterprise did when they are using critical open source? And maybe let's focus on something that isn't just donate money. What would they do?
Okay. I'm very sorry. That would have been the easy answer. So probably it's donate time. well, it's actually not too bad, but I think I don't know, enterprises probably should be just be more aware of what open source actually means, right? And usually they are just they are often just consuming, and so they are probably not aware that they're using a solo library, or they are just probably not aware that they are using a library which depends on 1 billion other libraries, and they're probably not aware that they're using an abandoned library. So I think they need to be aware of, or find a better understanding of what they are using. And I mean, if you have an incident like Log4j, and you're asking yourself the question, am I using it actually? I don't know. Then that's a problem. So, and on the other hand, before you choose a library, you probably look at who maintains it. So, so if you have like 5 options, and then you have one which is well maintained, 10 people actively working on it, why should you use the one other option that is retired? So I think they should be aware. So, and so something helps with awareness. So the SBOMs and the development and ideas around this, so that helps building this awareness. And I think it's still very early, and most companies probably never heard of something like this. But you asked for my wishes, right? So I wished
Yeah.
for something like this.
I mean, it's a basic prerequisite. You can't really know whether you're affected by any of these issues if you don't even have an inventory of what your dependencies are.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So CISA still lists Log4j as one of the most commonly exploited vulnerabilities today. Do you still hear about active exploitation on old or unpatched systems? Has this kind of ceased to be an issue? And from your perspective, why is it so hard for parts of the ecosystem to move off of the vulnerable versions after all these years?
Yeah. So active exploitations, no. So I don't hear anything. Actually, I don't know any real problems except for the work we caused and except for system shutting down. But so real hard hacks or something where real damage is done, I don't know actually of these things, but I know there are for sure unpatched systems. I know this because we have a report from the Maven team, or I think it was Sonatype who provides the report, who still who looks how many percent of the users are using unpatched Log4j versions. And the last time I looked, it was like 15% or something, which is ridiculous. So why 15%? Even 10% is too high. It should be like 1%. And I would expect this 1% that they are researchers who build vulnerable system to research them or something like this. So I have a friend, and he told me recently that they migrated a Java 1.3 project to Java 8. So like last year. So we are now with, I don't know, Java 21 or so. So it's really, really old. And I don't know why this is, but people are really sometimes very slow with updating code bases. Maybe they run systems they have forgotten. So that's one thing probably, or they have no proper way to update systems. So when you think on huge microservices systems that run probably, I don't know, 1,000 microservices can be complicated. Or they simply don't know they're using something. So here's the missing SBOM again. This all comes together. Probably this could be a very good use case for AI systems also, to say, okay, I have a Java 5 code base, let's upgrade to a secure, and it does its magic, and probably it's then easier. I don't know if this will help moving forward, but from my experience, it's people forget, or people don't have the time to upgrade, or they just don't know anymore.
Yeah. And now I'm curious to ask you about your predictions for the future, and specifically then, I guess, in the negative predictions. So what is your biggest worry for the next 2 to 3 years? Is it complexity getting out of control? Is it the AI-assisted exploitation? Is it AI-generated vulnerabilities? Is it maintainer attrition, maybe because of maybe it's because of AI-generated issues and pull requests? I don't know. Is it dependency sprawl, or is it maybe something else?
Yeah, I would love to say all of them, but you asked me for the biggest worries, so I guess I have to be more specific. Actually, as probably many of us know, we are all thinking about the next 2 to 3 years or so, because so much is moving. You mentioned AI-assisted exploitation. I think, yes, it will increase, of course, but attackers always had better tools, and that's not new, right? So the solution would be we have our own AI-assisted defense. So probably AI attackers and AI defense, I don't know. So yes, it will be bad, but probably that's not my biggest worry here. My biggest worry is actually relatively new. It's when the narrative becomes to software is easy now, or AI writes it for us. I think we risk underestimating the cost of maintaining infrastructure. So, because as I already mentioned, so writing code, this is one thing, right? Everyone can quickly write a couple of lines of code, but maintaining it for 10 years, that's something completely differently. And I think we need to maintain, if you write code base, you need to be prepared that if you're successful, it unfortunately means you will be working for free for the next 10 years. So be very careful with what you wish for. So success is not always good here. I think so major frameworks like Spring or the Apache Software Foundation or Eclipse projects or so, I think they will stay strong because they have institutions behind them, or a couple of people are trained for that. But the long tail is more my concern. So they have, we have many small but very critical dependencies. There are solo maintainers, and if they feel that their software is not of value anymore, they just stop, right? So that's the glue. That's glue libraries, and that nobody notices them, and until they break, I think, and that's my worry. I mean, yeah, that's actually something I think often now about the value of my own work. So,
yeah. Well, now let's transition into a lightning round. I want to ask you 4 questions that are hopefully have pretty short answers, and we can ask you quickly in this lightning round. So I'll start with what's the most underrated security habit for maintainers?
I would say it's learning about it, right? So learning takes time. We all think, yes, I have heard about, let's say, SQL injections. I have never created an SQL injection myself to see how it's actually working, right? So, I mean, okay, meanwhile, I'm older, I've seen it somehow. But yeah, so learning is underrated. So security is not for free. You need to invest in yourself for this.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
What's the most overrated security practice in enterprise consumption of open source?
Yeah, that's probably my favorite, because companies usually say, "Hey, that's open source from the Apache Software Foundation, so we trust them, so it must be secure." Yeah, and nothing is secure. And as I have seen myself, probably you wrote the code 10 years ago, and nobody asked you to do that, so you forget about it. So nothing is secure. So don't rely on anyone, even if you trust the people, if you like them, if they are family members or so. Don't trust the family members when it comes to security. No.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's not about the intentions of the individuals involved. Oftentimes,
Right.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
What's the best boring improvement, security improvement, like docs, tests, release automation, CI hardening, code review rules, or removing dependencies? What do you think is the best boring kind of improvement you can make?
Yeah, so like 2 years ago, I would have probably said tests or something, I don't know. But today I would say read your code, because many of us use agentic coding, and I have one friend who recently told me he uses 3 different AI systems to generate code, and he's so happy because he's so fast. And when I listen to him, do you actually read what the bots write? I mean, of course they make us fast, but probably they don't write what you really want. And so the most probably boring improvement we can have in today's programming workflow is actually reading what was written. And hopefully you're a speed reader, because there is a lot written very quickly.
Yeah. And final lightning round question. What's one metric you'd track for project health that isn't stars or downloads or CVEs?
Yes, so I'm biased here because I come from the Apache Software Foundation and spent most of my open source time here, and I gladly say it's the community. So if you have a healthy project, you will find a place where developers come together. So for the ASF, it's mailing lists. Look at the mailing list and see if there is any discussion going on. Are people actually talking to each other? You can even find out if people don't like each other, then probably it's critical, right, to this. Or if you don't have anything on the mailing list, it's not very actively maintained, it could be a problem. So, or if you see people like each other, they love working with each other, and mailing list is full every time, every month, 100 mails or so, then you probably know, okay, that's a good project to rely on. So I said mailing list because for the ASF, mailing list is most important, but I fully understand that younger people or more modern people are probably they're using Slack, Discord, whatever. So you can also look there.
Mm-hmm.
What I always find critical is the number of issues, because if you have many issues or many people commenting on issues, that's not necessarily community. For me, community is more like people actually stepping up when you have a problem, joining you in helping fixing the problem. And that helped us tremendously when we had Log4j, because when I heard of it, this project was not so active, and I was thinking, oh my God, now I have to learn about this specific component, and I have no idea. I was really a little bit, panicking is not the right word, because it's too soft for what I felt. But suddenly the community came back. So people who didn't work for Log4j in like 1 or 2 years or 3 years or whatever, they just showed up again. So, hey, there is a problem. Let's fix it together. And yeah, so the community saved it then. And it was a great and fantastic experience for me to see that people just stick together. So if I would look at one metric only, I would look at the community.
Yeah, that's amazing. Christian, thank you. This was exactly the kind of conversation I was hoping that we'd have when we started planning this Fireside Chat series. Honest, practical, and genuinely sobering in the best way. I think what strikes me most about all the problems you described is that they aren't really technical problems at their core. I mean, some of them are, but a lot of them are human ones about sustainability, trust, and then often a lot of it is about the gap between the value that open source creates and then the support that it actually receives. And I think Log4j, yes, it was a flaw in the library, but it was also a kind of a flaw in how everyone thinks about their open source software and relates to it. I would argue, and we don't take that seriously enough. So if you're watching this and you maintain a critical open source library, I hope you enjoyed the conversation and felt some ability to relate to some of the stuff Christian was describing. And if you're on the kind of company side consuming open source, I hope you feel maybe a greater sense of responsibility and can help chip in to your favorite projects and the projects you depend upon. So with that, I just want to mention to folks, we're going to be doing this every month, bringing in practitioners, maintainers, researchers, and builders who are working on, I think, the hardest problems in security and open source. So if you want to be notified when the next one of these comes out, you can follow Socket and subscribe wherever you're watching this right now. And Christian, again, just genuinely thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. I really hope we get a chance to do this again. Maybe in a few more years, we can check in and see how things are going and do this again.
Yeah, hopefully not with the next security incident.
Yeah, maybe that can be the goal. Is we don't wait for the next security incident to tell you you're doing a good job.
Yeah, probably yes. Yeah. So thank you very much for having me and asking these questions. I believe that speaking about these things and the problems and that there are people behind open source, this is also a very, very important contribution to secure open source software and open source in general. So thank you again for the invite and for doing this. I appreciate it, and I will make sure to subscribe to your channel so I won't miss any of the future episodes. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Appreciate it. And thank you all for watching. Have a great rest of your day.